Welcome to the definitive guide to DPA ads on Facebook. A lot of folks know these ads as easy ways to get retargeting going, but they're actually missing some very core competencies around it and some amazing opportunities like how to use it to do market research. Also, what are your audience requirements to really make this scale? And why does this actually super help our one campaign strategy? This is one of the core elements of what to do in the one step beyond one campaign. And if you're running any sort of store with more than 4 or 5 SKUs in it and you're not using DPA ads, I urge you to give it a shot. Now, it's not always the best for every single advertiser. It's not always the best for every single brand. But if you haven't tried it yet, this is untapped markets for you where you can be making really easy money and cash flow, especially if you're super high ticket and especially if you have a lot of SKUs. With that being said, let's dive into this. And before we get started, I just want to say this. I know you can be literally anywhere in the world right now, and I really appreciate you taking your time to be here with me today. I'm going to make sure that this is as useful and as helpful to you as possible. If you have any questions with the stuff, please feel free to write down in below what they are, and I will get back to you. Also, read the description of this. There's an insanely helpful article, and there are links down below to the Facebook Ads MBA program, which is the #1 resource to teach you how to be more than just a media buyer, but actually a brand building CMO that will give you the strength, skills, and abilities with framework and repeatable systems and process to take just about any brand that can succeed to a place far above and beyond anywhere that you might be able to get it without. And also, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com to make sure that you see helpful information in your inbox on a weekly basis. There's so much more in there, but we'll not try to drive all of that. Go down, ring the bell, subscribe. Let's get started. So, we all know and love DPA ads as, what we ultimately end up using to do retargeting often, right? And we know it from that resource. And to be fair, that's a great use case of it. But when we are doing retargeting with DPA ads, we also have to remember that we need to understand what the right audience is. And we could also go broad with it, what we call DABA, dynamic ads for broad audiences. So there's a lot of applications here. That being said, let's dive into understanding what audiences you should actually use and what those requirements really are for this to be meaningful to you at all in the first place. First thing we need to understand is what is the level of investment that we're willing to make in running our DPA ads. Is it 20 bucks a day? Is it 1,000 a day? Is it 10% of our budget? Is it 50% of our budget? We also need to understand something else. What does success look like? And are we going to be able to use this audience in a way where we're going to be able to leverage machine learning because we're getting out of the learning phase? Or ultimately, are we using this retargeting audience primarily to push cash flow, even though we're not able to necessarily leave the learning phase, but because strategically that audience is so effective for us, we can still get good results? Those are all really great questions, and you need to have the answers to those questions before you get started. So let's break down the #1 thing. What audience should we run this against anyway? Well, the easiest answer is go view content last 7 days and see what happens. Now, that's going to be helpful, maybe, hopefully, and that's a decently educated guess. But there's there's much better ways of looking at this and a lot more information that you should be looking at. First off, let's try to understand what the CPMs are going to be at our DPA. Let's say it's $50 CPMs. Okay. Now let's say we're willing to spend $100 on a DPA ad. Okay. That means we are likely to see 2,000 impressions. Okay. Now, let's say that we are ultimately going to see a good result around a baseline of 2 impressions per day per user. That's a decent expectation in a retargeting audience. All right. So that means on a daily basis, we have enough money to realistically reach about 1,000 people. Okay. Now, we also know that at best, If you get extreme saturation and a really high frequency, maybe you're going to reach 50% of any target audience. Okay? So that means in order to reach an audience of 1,000 people 2 times with your $100 a day budget, you're going to need an audience that's at least 2,000 individuals. Good to know. Now, how do we determine what that audience even looks like? Well, you can go in and guess, or you can go into your events manager and start to play around with parts of the funnel and timelines. You can get up to 28 days worth of information, and if it's longer than that, you can extrapolate the information. But let's just say, what is the add to carts over the last week? Now, it's probably not unique, but if add to carts over the last week is 300 people, you can pretty much guarantee that there's no way you're going to be able to use an add to cart audience with any recency of a month or less with a DPA ad. There's just not enough people. Now, maybe you can get 50, 60 bucks a day and you get a couple sales out of it, but you're going to be hammering a lot of people with your ads that don't want to buy. Remember, the vast majority of people in a retargeting audience are not going to convert. Let's say it's a 10% conversion rate, and there's 1,000 people in that audience. That means 900 people have no interest in your product. That means that if you are reaching, say, 400 or 500 people a day, and let's say it's 500, 450 of those people, 900 out of those 1,000 impressions are bad. Let's use a real world example. If you've shown an interest in, say, a vacuum cleaner, and then for the next month, a vacuum cleaner salesman comes to your door twice a day to try to sell you, by like day 2 or 3, you're gonna hate that person. How many people do you think hate your brand right now? Do you think that's ultimately helpful for your relationship with Facebook as an advertiser? Yeah, you're making sales, but is that really a good thing? Long term, is the upside of revenue offsetting the damage that is being done? That's a probably no. So we need an audience that's much larger than that. And also, if I added to cart 27 days ago, and I haven't added to cart ever since, and you've been knocking on my door twice a day, do you think that I'm going to change my mind all of a sudden? And it's just probably no. Plus, I'm probably also seeing you're targeting your ads in broad targeting if I have any interest in the brand. So that recency also plays a pretty big part. How many days are you willing to bother somebody incessantly after they already tell you no? What if this was dating? Do we live in a world where you think that when somebody says no, please stop, your best thinking is to bother them repeatedly, multiple times a day for weeks on end until they change their mind? But that's the theory behind basically all retargeting on Facebook. So when we use retargeting with DPA ads, we have to get above and beyond that. Let's assume that $50 CPM and $100 budget. And again, these are just very round numbers. Yours might be very different. I've seen DPA ads as low as $20 CPMs and as high as 100, right? I've used it on budgets that are $20 a day and as high as a couple thousand. So just using round numbers here. So instead, maybe our focus should be, let's find an audience that's 4,000 or 5,000 people with a little bit of recency. Now we can go back to that events manager and see, well, we've got 5,000 view contents in the last week. Let's use that. Those aren't necessarily unique pixel events. What if somebody views your product multiple times or multiple products? A great way to decipher this is using your Google Analytics or site insights and determine how many pages does the average person look at. Divide that view content number by that page view number, and you're going to get to some factor. Let's say an audience is 5,000 people, and the average person looks at 1.8 web pages. Let's use an easy number. Let's say it's 2. Okay, then that 5,000 view content is really maybe 2,500 people. Well, let's double the timeline out to 2 weeks. Now it's roughly 5,000 people. 5,000 people. Now we're getting in a spot where we aren't bothering everybody constantly. Our frequency is probably going to be lower on a day. And because we're driving enough interactions, as people fall out of that window, new people fall in. And now we're sitting in a situation where if that works, we can also scale our budget. That's a phenomenally better situation than just saying, I'm going to do this. Now, mind you, if you have a lot of volume, for instance, I was sitting in a spot where I was getting 1,000 add to carts in a week. Sometimes a day. I would go add to cart one day with DPA and I was crushing. But I was also spending like $30,000 to $50,000 a day on a brand where that was reflective of 40% of revenue. So just understand your audience requirements and the impact it has on your business and why retargeting is not a good idea most of the time. And when it is a good idea, Broad is already doing that for you. So if you have any questions about this stuff, please write below and look down below. There's an article in here that's also going to be very, very helpful for you to understand this stuff. If you like this, please go ahead and tap like, go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on the audio podcast, set it for download. You don't even have to listen. I'd appreciate it a lot. And if you really value this information, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com or check out the MBA program at mba.facebookdisruptor.com. Now, let's look at another side of DPA, which is something I find is criminally underappreciated. And by that, I mean, I see literally no one talking about it, even though it is potentially the most valuable part of DPA outside of the cash flow. Market research. Did you know that in a dynamic ad, just like in dynamic creatives, where you can go to breakdown, delivery, and look at the spend, whatnot, by element, you can also go in and look at the breakdown by product ID. Now, if you go into the Facebook and you see breakdown and you see delivery and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to see product ID. Now, the amazing thing about this is it lets you actually see how much spend went to each SKU or even each variant ID within your product catalog. Now, this is great because it's going to let you know, well, what do people actually want to see? Much like in dynamic creative, where Facebook is showing people the copy and the content that is most likely to get them to engage and have a positive experience. With DPA ads, it's also showing them the products that's most likely to get them that experience. And wouldn't you love to know when somebody's walking through your store what they're actually interested in? What if you mailed them a catalog and you knew every single page that got dog-eared and every single product that was circled and everything else? Because when you run DPA ads, you have that information. Now, the best part about this is you could easily take that info and then index it by level of intent. What if you have an add to cart from the last 14 days and a view content from the last week? What is the difference in delivery by product? Is the abandoned cart product in that audience of folks that have abandoned cart, the product IDs that get the most spend, does it match what happens when people are just shopping around the store? What's really interesting here is it lets you know what products people are window shopping on and what products people are legitimately interested in. And when they've already rejected your primary offer, What products get them most interested to come back into the store? Now, I've used this to develop bundles. I've used this to ultimately shift what our hero products are. It's also excellent to understand what your pre and post-transactional upsells should be. What if, when somebody went to your primary product and they checked out, you offered them the 2 or 3 other products that most people were actually interested in when given the chance to navigate freely, and shown the products that they were most interested based on their traffic around the entire internet and their behavior in the real world? This is a game changer. Remember, the most popular products by just actual site visits and volume of sales generally aligns with whatever's being promoted the most. So you can't look to, well, these are the products we sell the most, if you're not promoting every product evenly. I'm not saying you should ever promote all the products evenly. What I'm saying is, there's a product you are selling the most. There might also be a product that maybe it's your 4th bestseller, but it's getting you a ton of traffic when you give Facebook the opportunity to show your catalog. And maybe that's because that's a really well-selling product in the market, that you have a solution that is getting you attention. That is incredibly helpful information. Also, if you have variants, wouldn't it be interesting to know that the red shoe is getting 10 times as much spend as the blue one? What about the blue bra is getting 10 times the amount of spend as the white one? That's good information. Maybe I can use that information to change my landing page, or my product images, or my creative on the front end outright. The point here is your market, the people that you're targeting with ads, with DPA, or in this case, DABA as well, which is just DPA, but to a broad audience instead of retargeting. They're giving you tremendous information. And if you're not indexing this spend against product to take actionable insight, you are missing, I would consider, the vast majority of the value of that DPA spend. Now, some people will look at DPA and say, look, this is amazing. I'm able to get a 3x ROAS. I don't care about a 3x ROAS on a little bit of spend every day. I care about the information that's going to give me a 10% boost in conversion rate on my landing page. I care about the information that's going to give me a 20% lower CPA because I've been able to give creative direction to my content developers for my primary ads. I'm interested in knowing what product most people are likely to take as an upsell so I can improve my AOV by 70%. That's phenomenally more important than a couple sales a day, or even a couple dozen, because these are mountain moving decisions. Again, that's why we use broad audiences. That's why we use dynamic ads. That's why we index for performance, and we understand the information being given, because the vast majority of the value of Facebook is the amplification of our existing business model. If you're not letting your customers tell you exactly what they want and then responding to that, you're being negligent to the upside of your business. Now, I'll give you a real world example of this that stunned and amazed me and fundamentally changed the way I thought about retail. I'm sure you've heard of this brand called, or the store called Hot Topic. Now, Hot Topic is really cool if you're like 14. What Hot Topic did in the mid-90s was they sold all the sorts of stuff that, teenagers were into. But one of the things they did is they had a little notebook on the counter at every store that said, hey, if we don't have something, let us know what you want. And it was the job of the manager of every store to send in this information. What Hot Topic was able to do was pull their audience to understand what products those customers wanted. And as a result, they were able to stay ahead of the retail curve from grunge to emo to anime. Sometimes years ahead of their competitors because they were responding to what their customers wanted. The point here is your customers are giving you a wealth of information. Your job is to take advantage of that. And if you're not looking at the index of spend by product or variant ID within your DPA ads, you are neglecting potentially the most valuable investment into business intelligence that you're going to get from Facebook ads. Because Facebook ads generally don't steer the ship, right? They're the engine that sits in the back. They're not telling you where to go. They're pushing you in the direction that you've already decided. DPA ads, though, can be the scouts that let you know, should I keep going north or west or east? If you want to remove the guesswork, just respond to the needs of your market that they're already telling you with their eyeballs and money. That's how you scale. That's how you succeed. If you have any questions about this stuff, please comment below. Let me know. Sign up for the newsletter at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com. The Shape of Disrupt to Come is the weekly newsletter I send out every week with fun deals and discounts and bundles and interviews and articles and blogs and videos to you on a regular basis so that you can stay at the bleeding edge of all of this stuff. And if you really want to up your game and be light years ahead, just like Hot Topic was, check out the MBA program. Now, last thing that I'll get to here is, why does running DPA actually tremendously help our one campaign accounts? Now remember, our one campaign accounts don't necessarily have only one campaign in them. It is one campaign per business objective. If you have multiple business objectives, you could have multiple campaigns. So what's the business objective of DPA? Well, there's a couple of things. Maybe you're running it at $20 a day just so you can do market research and index your crowd on what is the psychological difference between somebody that views content and somebody that adds the cart. Maybe you're running it excluding everybody that's ever been to your site and seeing what products you have that are most interesting to get somebody's attention to want them to shop with you anyway. Effectively having a dynamic window display. That's phenomenal. Maybe you have a super high ticket like $1,000 product or $5,000 product. Maybe you're running lead gen or training or furniture or some bespoke custom items. You might not have the budget to run Facebook conversion ads and leave the learning phase and sell those $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 products. But that doesn't mean that if you have ancillary vertically integrated product offerings, remember, if you missed the last week's video around LTV, please go check out the definitive guide to raising LTV because it's phenomenal and you should really look into it. There's also an ebook on the way for that too. So go check that out. If you have those, why not run DPA? I know a lot of brands that are running $1,000 products that sell a bunch of $20, $30, $50, $100 items and little bundles, accessories, right? Whether it's surfboards or fishing rods or bikes or furniture or a million other things. A lot of clothing brands and sneaker companies. You might not have the budget right now to realistically get out of the learning phase in your one campaign to those products. So maybe you're using Facebook more as a lead gen to a very effective email funnel. But that doesn't mean you have to give up on cash flow. If you were to use your DPA ads to sell lower ticket items to generate a positive cash flow, whether it's your brand or a client, you could probably pay for all of your overhead operational cost of running ads and profit from it, while improving the LTV of your existing customers and acquiring new ones. And you're like, well, hey, that doesn't make any sense for my brand. Let me tell you why that's not necessarily true. I'll give you 2 examples. Number 1, I was running New Balance. Now, their sneakers are not sexy, especially if you're like 25. But a lot of people wanted to be fit. Our DPA ads would show socks and jogger pants. We would show t-shirts and exercise accessories. Now, it's a sneaker company, but it's a sneaker company built around a culture of health and fitness, right? And primarily they were shifting between being the thing for old folks with nice things to runners and functional footwear. You might not be interested in that unsexy shoe that your grandma liked, but maybe we can start selling you on other things, and we can do so at a pretty nice profit. If you put all of your lower price items that have high profit margin into DPA ads, just retargeting individuals that are mildly interested in the brand or even prospecting to get market share, your business objective of that DPA could be customer acquisition and cash flow. I can't tell you how many people were struggling to sell $500 items and then ran DPA and they got to a couple $1,000s a day between DABA and DPA, selling a whole bunch of $20, $30, $50, and $100 products to people all over the world, and then sold a bunch of those $500 things as upsells in email. That's a game changer. Struggling 6-figure businesses that became 8-figure ones. 7-figure businesses that had plateaued and Facebook ads didn't work are now on their way to 9-figure exits. Looking at it this way. Also, I hear from a lot of folks, well, I've got several products to make a profit on. I'm going to sell all of them. Well, we know objectively that's a bad idea. When we look at PSM, we know that some products just have a much better return than others do. And it also, why invest in multiple places to keep Facebook dumber in extra areas? That also makes landing page testing less effective and raises the cost of creative testing. There's a million reasons why you should not be running like 3 offers from your Facebook page. There are very, very, very few reasons that you should ever do that. I'm at $30,000, $50,000 a day in some accounts, and I have maybe a second product. This is neither time or place for that. Go look at Definitive Guide to PSM and creating bundles and adding LTV, all the definitive guides that we have. Go research those and you will get all of this information. There's also a great Everything You Need to Know series and Disruptor School guidebook series to all of this stuff. The point here is, what if your flagship product does your hero product does a fantastic job of getting people into the store, but not everybody wants to buy it? DPA could close the loop on all of those other things. What's also great is now your ads and your one campaign aren't the only touch point for a user. Meaning the frequency of your touch points with those customers is higher. Now, I see a lot of people say, well, first time impression rate means everything, and they're dead wrong. I've yet to see a single argument that says first time impression rate creates incremental lift for a business. In practice, there's no logic or math to back that up. I have yet to see literally anything that supports it. So let's say instead of hammering people over the head with the 3 to 5 really great ads that you have, they see a few of them, and then other touch points are just your entire catalog. Now those 3 to 5 ads aren't trying to sell to get you revenue. They're the thing that gets somebody interested in your brand. And if they don't buy that product, then the DPA ads can close the deals on the products that person is most interested in. Maybe you're doing DPA in more of a DABA situation, where it's also doing prospecting for you. And when somebody shows an interest, now you can hit them with your broad ads in your single campaign to try to close the deal on your hero product, because those ads are also retargeting. And now you said, well, you were kind of interested in a few of these ancillary products, but have you seen our flagship one? Going back to another example, because I said I'd give you two. Let's say it's an outdoor brand, right? There's a great one that comes to mind of a fly fishing rod company. And you might be in the market for, a couple things, right? Maybe you're a fly fisher and you're checking out rods and you're checking out spools and you're checking all these things. We got a lure and you're like, hey, cool. This company also has lures. There's a few fun things in there. You click on the ad, you shop around, whatever. Now you've given us a signal you're in the market. And our top of funnel ads, our broad targeting ads, are retargeting you to upsell you from that low ticket item to the flagship one. And the conversion rate of that is going to be pretty good. And the estimated action rate of that ad is going to be pretty good, because you've already told us that you're interested. The beauty of this is there is a symbiotic relationship between how all of your campaigns function. A DPA ad might function very differently in your business model than your one campaign per business objective of your primary offer, where you're running DCTs that brought against the control environment. And if you strategize it properly, they can be force multipliers to each other. And that is what your primary effort should be. That is how you use DPA. That is how you scale a brand. That is how you have scalable, stable results for projectable, growing cash flow and customer acquisition. And if your goals aren't ultimately to produce that, they're not aligned with success. Welcome to the definitive guide to everything you need to know to be a successful media buyer with Facebook ads and more. From somebody that has managed agencies, run agencies, accidentally started agencies, built brands on in-house, been a vendor, spent well over hundreds of millions of dollars. And honestly, my students and clients have done billions in revenue. And I'm here to make sure that you understand the three most important things that you need to get good at in order to be truly elite when it comes to Facebook ads, and how to get started on your path to changing your entire life, because this is one of the easiest and most fun ways to provide a lot of value and get a really, really great paycheck. Let's go! First off, I just want to say thank you. I know you could be literally anywhere on the internet right now, and you've chosen to be here, and I really appreciate it. And I want to let you know that this time is not going to be one that you look back on like, where did it go? So we're going to dive into the three biggest things that you need to understand right now. And if you value this stuff and you really enjoy it, it would mean the world to me if you could share this with one other person. My history in this space, to get you a bit of background, is I've been a media buyer for nearly a decade. I have personally managed hundreds of millions of dollars in ad spend. I'm not saying I've had a team that managed a certain amount of money and then taken credit for it. No, I've literally hit that many zeros. I've had millions and millions of dollars of mistakes, and I've had the pleasure of being the upside of billions of revenue for my students and clients, not for me. I'm not a billionaire. But the point is, I've been there and I've done that. When I got started in Facebook, there was no attribution. We didn't have a pixel. There were no conversion campaigns. And CPMs were a couple of dollars. I remember when interest groups were made. I was there at the beginning of the lead gen ad unit and DPA and CBO and advanced matching and dynamic creative. And I'm here to show you the things that I've taught media buyers who are just starting out, whether I was a supervisor at an agency, the owner of an agency, head of growth and operations at big 7, 8, and 9-figure businesses and other places, as well as my students and clients from around the world that have been in my Facebook groups, YouTube, and through my Facebook Ads MBA program and Disruptor School. And I felt like a lot of the time I talk about extraordinarily high level concepts. But I wanted to break this down to something to be way more actionable for those that are afraid and might get really bad advice from other folks that honestly don't know what they're talking about. So let's get started. By the way, if you want tips like this every week, go to newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com and sign up for the free newsletter every week. Let's get started. The most important thing as a media buyer, and there's a lot of differing opinions, but I'm going to go ahead and stake my claim is what is the most important thing. Honestly, know your job. And what I mean by that is it is extraordinarily common where what is best for the client is not what's being asked for you. I can think of a very specific example, for instance, where our client was CBS television and I had a 7-figure daily budget. I did a really good job. Now, our objective was to reach about 75-80% of Americans, roughly 2.5 times over a 3-day period to promote the launch of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Code Black, Supergirl, a lot of other shows during that launch. Schitt's Creek. Anyway, here's the problem. We were given a 7-figure daily budget. Let's say it was $1 million. Now, I went out of my way to figure out how can I do that job, 75 to 80% of Americans, roughly 2.5 times over that period. And what I ended up doing was actually wildly over-delivering. Now, at the time, what we did was use a reach and frequency campaign. It takes you about half an hour. You set the thing up, you get it going, you load up the creative, you make the buy, done. 20% commission, that's a $200,000 payday for the ad agency. Now, mind you, at the time, I was making about $75K. So, not nearly. Like, we're getting an idea of the impact here, right? So I made this mistake about 4 times that week. Instead of setting up the reach and frequency to get a 2.5x on 75-80% of people, I did a manual bid and accelerated delivery and some other tricks. I actually got to about an 85% share of voice at a frequency of 3.5 to 4. Well, here's the problem. Facebook literally stopped spending. I had reached too high of a frequency against my entire audience. Now, I did that at about 800 grand, not the 1 million. So me as a media buyer, I actually over-delivered and saved the client money. However, what I did was not my job. My job was to make the person that hired me look good to their boss. And that's your job as a media buyer 100% of the time. Because ultimately, there were 2 really big negative impacts that occurred immediately from this. The first was the ad agency lost a large amount of money on commission. Over the course of the week, I literally cost them over half of my annual paycheck in commission. That's a problem. And then CBS, the television organization, the guys and women that hired us to do the work this is when I was a director at Omnicom, a supervisor at Resolution Media, the performance division of Omnicom, when I was directing the CBS account. The person that hired us went to their boss and asked for $1 million. We did the job for less than that. Ultimately, that made them look bad to their boss and made it way more difficult for us to get more money moving forward. Now, in retrospect, I worked about 3.5-4 hours per account to really hack the hell out of this thing and do the absolute best job for the client. Which means I worked about 10 to 12 times harder than I should have to ultimately hurt the relationship by over-delivering and doing effectively a good job. Now that's one example. But the point here is understand what your role is. A lot of times people hire ad agencies or they hire media buyers because they want good results. Now, as a very sophisticated media buyer, I can understand that maybe the best thing isn't to get a good ROAS because cash flow at a higher volume is a much greater need for the business. But if the person that hired you needs to look good to their boss and they promised a certain outcome because they might not necessarily understand what it is that you do, when you do a really good job, but it doesn't deliver on what you are hired for, that is a tremendous detriment. So the point here is, while we talk a lot about don't use retargeting and don't worry about ROAS and interest groups are trash and all of these other things, at a very macro level, none of those things are arguable. They are objective facts for the success of business. However, there are a lot of people whose entire success has always come as a media buyer at an ad agency or for clients. Now, these people have never seen the other side of that conversation, or maybe they have, but they've always been hired to deliver ROAS or whatever it happened to be. So while we might intellectually know those are objectively terrible things to care about and are absolute liabilities to the business growth, where we sit in the business doesn't allow us to have the impact to make those better macroeconomic business decisions. So we have to work really hard at making sure that our boss looks good to the person that they work for. Your job in any team is, one, to lift those around you. And that's what I always teach. One of the reasons that, yet another reason that interest groups are trash and why broad is excellent is because when you drive a greater number of higher quality individuals that all look and feel the same, it makes landing page testing easier. It makes the emails teams work much easier. It makes LTV testing and bundles and upsells and AOV testing and everything else much easier because it's a way more simple ecosystem. However, if the dotted line where that contract was signed, above it says specific spend, specific ROAS from this platform, first off, I'm sorry that you have to work really hard to do ultimately a bad job for the client. But more importantly, it is not your place in that conversation to ultimately determine what those needs are. And when you see advice from ad agencies and from elite media buyers that don't actually run their own brands, haven't actually taken brands to market, and don't actually do things beyond the platform, 90% of their advice is how to make that role look as attractive as possible to the person that's hiring them. And there's a reason why there's a lot of churn in clients when it comes to ad agencies. And there's a reason why some clients have to go to ad agency after ad agency after ad agency. And it very rarely has to do with the work ethic of the media buyer. It almost always has to do with the lack of alignment between the person that hired you and the person that hired them and what those goals are. So ultimately, the number one most important thing is to, one, read the tea leaves and try to figure out what's going on. But more importantly, prioritize the very specific task at hand. Now, me personally, I was fired from a lot of jobs. I never worked at an agency for more than 9 months. I never worked at an in-house at a brand for more than 2 years. And during that time, I was accidentally starting random agencies and working for myself all the time. And we'll get to that in a minute. But one of the values that I gained from that was repeated exposure to many different strategies, repeated exposure to many different types of problem solving, and repeated exposure to many different sides of that equation, which is why When you see me say specific things that might be considered controversial, or maybe they could be considered, counterintuitive or just contrarian, often it's because my experience shows me that the need of the media buyer very rarely is 100% aligned with the need of the brand. My focus is on building businesses and success to create jobs, stability, and confidence. The goal of a lot of media buyers working at agencies and a lot of agency owners is to look smart so that more people can hire them. But again, their objective with that client very rarely meets the business needs on a macroeconomic level. But as a media buyer, that is not your role. And I got fired left, right, and center a dozen times because I refused to accept that. Now, that worked out for me, but it was an extremely difficult path. So the first thing I really want to put on your roadmap here is know your job. Very specifically, how to get it done. And more importantly than that, how to do it in a way that makes the person that hired you look good to their boss. And then the real trick is figuring out how to do that work in less and less time with a more and more consistent outcome. When we say media buying is dead, it's because ultimately most of those moves have no impact on the profit and loss statement of the business. But as a media buyer, for you to prove your worth and to keep your job, those things are really important. The other side of this, though, that I do want to make you understand, you're rarely ever going to get promotions and pay raises as a media buyer. If you want to earn more money, you have to find a new job, working basically your boss's gig at the shop next door. And there's another thing we can do too, and we'll get to that in a second. The second most important thing for media buyers to really understand, if you want to come in day one and be as good as possible, potentially this could be the most important thing, but I'm going to put it as number 2, is learn Excel. Be wicked fast at spreadsheets. Data rules the day when it comes to decision making and processing. And when we talked about looking good to your boss and making the person that hired you look good to their boss, one of the easiest ways to do that is to make sure that all actionable insight is available in a click. When you get really good at Excel, you can make dashboards, you can make reporting documents, you can make whatever it is that you need to provide the answers to the questions that you haven't been asked yet. That takes time. But learn how to do pivot tables. Learn how to make that data analysis second nature. And more importantly than that, not only being able to do it quickly, but understand what data analysis is actually important and which one is kind of a waste of time. And there's another big mistake that I made a few times that I just want to tell you. When you are doing a pivot table, never blend averages. Never say, well, my cost per result is all of these numbers and then I put it into a pivot table, now it's this, because that's not actually the truth. Do the math if it's a cost per. Only use raw data and then make new columns to do the math for you, because averaging averages is a tremendous mistake. I've easily wasted a few $1 million learning that lesson. Now, when we're talking about learning Excel, there are really 3 things that you need to understand. One is pivot tables. Get really good at it. And it's actually really, really easy to do. Go onto YouTube, figure it out. The second thing with pivot tables is the display of the information. Oftentimes I see reports from agencies where it's just a line. And then I say, okay, well, we did 17,000. Awesome. How did we get there? And it'll take a day or two for somebody to write me back an email to give me that answer. When you are giving an answer inside of a report or delivering information to somebody, what I highly recommend is that you have inside of your Excel spreadsheet or your Google Analytics or whatever it is that you're doing, Google Sheets or whatever, have a tab that is all of the right answers, but include how you got there in that document. That way, when somebody says, oh, we got to this, how? That answer is available. One of the most infinitely valuable things that you can bring to the table is an elimination of wasted time. Anybody can do the job of media buying because it's extraordinarily simple. It takes another level of thought process to be able to provide data that is actionable and access to answers in a quick fashion. So learn Excel. Number 2 in that list is when we're talking about display of information and we're talking about everything else, one of the other things that's really important here is to make things aesthetic. Numbers inside of a spreadsheet are ugly as hell. So one of the things we can do is start to dominate color coding, make things work, thick borders, non-thick borders. You don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but make a standard report that works for you. And when you make a standard report, next time you have to do one, you could literally just copy that standard report and replace the raw data. And then that report that took you 2 hours to do the first time takes you 10 minutes to do the second time. And you get really, really good. And you're fast. Speed to data is one of, if not the most important access to growth when it comes to data analysis, which is, outside of creative direction, probably the most important skill that you can have as a media buyer. Some people are exceptional at creative. Some people are exceptional at data. If you're not one of those people, you're going to get passed by somebody who is. I personally favor the side of Excel because creative is great. And I think it's tremendously powerful. But if you can't tell me based on data why a decision needs to happen and where to move, then we're just working off of your opinion. And your opinion is great. And it's one of many. When it's data, it's not an opinion. It's a fact. And there's a big difference that you see me often go off online with people inside of YouTube or Twitter or Instagram where they give opinions. And they're not necessarily wrong. But the facts show the trend analysis to put their opinion into context. Data with context is infinitely more valuable. The last thing when it comes to learning Excel is a lesson I learned from one of my employees. Be the person that other people go to get answers when it comes to Excel. If somebody says, do you know how to do this? Raise your hand and say yes, and then figure it out. Because it's not just about figuring out Excel. When you are doing Excel or spreadsheets, Google Sheets, whatever, to solve problems, you're also getting exposure to what problems need to be solved. One of the reasons that I know that most of the advice I see from experts and gurus and agencies that require you to work really hard to get a better platform result actually is a complete waste of time is because I had to do all of the reports to measure the impact of everybody's work. When you're exposed to all of that information because you're the one processing it, you're going to get to know what everybody does and why. It's basically the mailroom version of data at an ad agency. So when you understand how to do all of the equations and how to set up answers for everybody, you're going to meet more people, you're going to put in more reps, and ultimately you're going to understand what data is actually really important. and which data doesn't mean anything. Because believe me, when you work really, really hard at putting together a report and you present it and nobody gives a shit over and over again, you're going to realize that that doesn't have any value. And when you see more and more people saying, this is how you hack that thing, you're going to understand who actually knows what they're talking about. The last thing here, you're just starting out as a media buyer. Get a job, get a gig, get a paycheck, love it. Outside of that, get work. Freelance alongside of it. Absolutely. Undercharge, over-deliver, and stay busy. If you have more time on your calendar, you're charging too much. Charge $100 today and $200 tomorrow. I started out at $10 an hour, and now I don't do media buying for clients without equity. I took time, but what was $10 an hour became 15, became 20. What was $200 a month became $500. What was $2,000 a month became $2,500, became $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000. When you have your entire calendar full and you want to land new clients, charge that new person more money than your cheapest client. Then you can fire your cheapest client or ask them to match it. What you're doing is you're basically raising your value per contract of what you're worth. And this isn't just about income. It's about doing the reps and getting exposure. If you're both in-house and agency, if you are both running stuff for clients and also helping people build their business, if you're doing organic and paid, if you're doing Facebook and TikTok, if you're doing growth hacking and email, you're going to ultimately learn how all of the things come together. Now, you don't need to be an expert on all of it, but you can't be an expert in any of it until you understand the impact of the work that you do. One of the biggest reasons that I call a lot of people out on their efforts to make Facebook ROAS as big as possible, and why they say, well, we're going to go off of interest groups and lookalikes because they work better. Because I know, having run all of the other teams, having done all of the other work, having written all of the reports for everybody else, and having done enough reps in agency at Facebook marketing partners for vendors and in-house brands and clients, and helped people along the way below me reach greater success, which I literally spend hours every single day helping people solve problems and making them better, which gives me the reps on a daily basis for people around the world. That exposure will give you context to your results and to your thinking. And so when these people talk about, well, this is how you make Facebook look good, this is how you make Facebook look good, I know that that's actually terrible advice for the business owner. And there's context to these decisions. Now, maybe that agency owner knows their job and they're just trying to look good to the person that hired them. Maybe they know how to do Excel, but if they were really good at it, they'd be able to prove to that business owner why their objective might not actually be the best thing for them. And then they become infinitely valuable because you are having a conversation instead of a media buyer, as a marketing director, as a CMO, because you're able to now take data in and prove why 1.5x ROAS at $2,000 a day is way better than a 3x ROAS at $500 a day. Now, intellectually, we might know that, but how do you prove it with data? And how do you prove that this ROAS on Facebook is too high, or this interest group doesn't move anything on the profit and loss statement, so it's just a waste of time? That information is only ever going to come from doing the work. That exposure and confidence is only going to come from repeated failure, stress, and exposure to the reps. Do the work over and over again. And honestly, if you do that for a year or 2 years, it's extraordinarily unlikely that you won't be making as much or twice as much working for yourself as what any agency will pay you to do the job. The average media buyer in an agency right now is making between $45,000 and $60,000 a year. That's a really good living, probably getting benefits, etc. If you get 3 people to pay you $2,000, that's $70,000 a year. If you get 4, maybe you get a couple at 25 or 3, you're making $100,000. And at $100,000, you can buy your own damn insurance. So the point is, know your job, learn Excel, undercharge, over-deliver, and stay busy until you are your own boss. And work the reps. And there's no reason why anyone within a year can't be making 6-figure income. Welcome to the definitive guide to landing page testing with Facebook ads. This is an extremely vital skill that sadly there's far too much misnomers about and lack of understanding. So as somebody that has literally tested thousands of web pages on hundreds of millions of dollars of spend, let me break down the 3 biggest skills that you're going to need to know, plus 2 of the things that you're probably doing that might be the biggest harm to your overall success. And lastly, what to do when you get a win, what to do when you get it right, and how to know that you actually have something worth making a change. Because honestly, that's usually one of the biggest mistakes most people make. So we're going to unpack all of that. Buckle up. This is going to be super, super fun. I really appreciate all the suggestions for more content. Comment below if you'd love to see me cover anything else. Now, before we get started, just a little bit of something. I know that you could be literally anywhere on the internet right now, and you've chosen to be here. I want you to know that I'm 100% going to make that worth your while, and we're going to dive super deep into all of this. If you have any questions, do not be shy. Please ask. If you love this and you value it, go ahead and smash the like. It means so much. Go to the bell on the subscribe, hit it, ring it, make sure you don't miss anything else because I'm putting content out every single day. And if you like this content and you want even more, go ahead to newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com and sign up for the free Shape Up Disrupt to come to make sure you don't miss anything with me in your inbox every single week with new articles, interviews, blog posts, and everything else to help you be successful. More success, less stress. And ultimately, if you're ready to make the investment into your future, into the future of your business, check out the MBA program, mba.facebookads.com. Get started there. Now, let's dive into it. When we are doing landing page testing on Facebook, we need to understand what's the right way to do this. Now, there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of different strategies and a lot of moves that people make, but there is one absolute answer to this, which is great. Sometimes it's an opinion, sometimes it's a stone cold fact. If you are doing landing page testing, make sure you are doing it by routing what happens after the click. Now, the biggest mistake that I see most people make is they're trying to do landing page testing by running ads to one landing page and then ads that are identical to a different one. Now, this makes sense. You're like, well, which one has the best conversion rate? However, even if the ads are identical, there is no way that you can even begin to project that there is like data in either one. You're comparing apples to home runs. It doesn't even matter. The point is, in order to test the efficacy of a landing page, you need to make sure that everything that happens before you make that test is the same. Now, you might say, well, I've got identical ads running in different ad sets or even the same ad set. There's no way that they're not going to be driving similar people. And you know what? They're probably targeting the same people. But one of those ads probably already has spend, which means that ad has already developed pretty heavily into developing its own lookalike audience. Or maybe they're both starting out from zero, in which case you might have to spend a lot of money or time until you even get a mature, projectable outcome from either one of those ads. And then only from that are you going to be able to understand, well, which one has a better link to the landing page. Now, here's the problem. What if you're running anything crazy like a second ad? How does that ad impact the delivery of the ad that you're testing? And what landing page does that ad work well to? The point here is, if you're running different ads, different post IDs to different landing pages, there is no way that you're going to be able to compare the results of those two things against each other, because they are wildly different data sets, targeting different people with different sets of data on different random delivery fairly in the beginning, because you have no way of controlling that these are going to the same people and understanding what happens afterwards. You just can't do that. Because remember, even if you're using a targeting audience, Facebook's showing ads to people based on the response of other people to that ad and to your page. If they're identical ads, what if one landing page has been running for a long time and the other one is brand new? Which one of those ads do you think is going to get a better CPM? The completely unknown element or the proven thing with lots of data? Because remember, what happens after the click has a tremendous impact on what you pay inside of Facebook and who the ad is shown to and how much spend is delivered. I've done something once where I was running UGC content from Dara Denny. Love her YouTube channel though. Check it out. She made an ad for my women's clothing brand. She was like, hey, I'm this size. We realized her size wasn't on the sizing chart. We ran that ad for about 5 days. Once we realized that and then changed the sizing chart, the spend on that ad went up 10x in 45 minutes. And that ad dropped CPA by 4x. And the CPM got cut by 50% within 72 hours. Why? Because what happens after the click matters. The point here is, if you are testing different ads to different landing pages, even if the ads are identical, you have two things that you cannot compare to each other ever. So we have to understand what we really need to do is isolate the variable. If you're not isolating variables, you're not running a true scientific test. That's just a fact. So instead, what we need to do is have the same ad run to the same page, and then reroute some of it to a second option. And from there, we can understand the conversion rate and all of that. Now, here's the problem when you're doing this that you avoid. Instead of having one ad or maybe 5 ads, maybe you duplicated all 5 ads that are really working in one audience and you're launching against another audience with a different landing page and all that stuff. You're getting rid of all that unknown, all of that wasted spend, all of that added CPM because you're depreciating your relationship with Facebook as a marketer, all of that liability to your business's bottom line just to get a very low quality data point. Instead, we're able to take every single ad that's currently running and run it to our control environment and then shift a little bit of it to someplace else and see if it does better over there. There are a lot of tools for this. The bougie versions like VWO are great. You can absolutely use like Google Optimize or Optimizely or anything else. The important thing is that we set up a structure that effectively looks like this. Every one of our ads goes to the same landing page. That landing page is basically a room where everybody goes into that club. Now, historically, that club had basically one door. When you walked in, you went straight into this room. What we're saying now is that club is a holding area where there's 2 rooms people can go to. Now, most of them go to the control room, to the room where we know everyone's going to have a good time. But a couple of people we're going to send into another club and see how that works. If we instead set up 2 identical clubs with 2 lines built off of promoters that are out there using the same flyers, there's absolutely no way we're going to be able to compare the results of one to the other. So when you do it after the click, you have 100% confidence in the outcome of that test being predictive. Also, you're applying that test to every single ad that you're running. So you don't have to start ads over from zero just to see, do they get lucky enough for me to tank the future of my business by chasing out of context results? Instead, you can not have to force any change. The Facebook algorithm sees very little discrepancy because more or less all you did was change the landing page, which is way different than changing the ad and the data set and the people targeted and all the historic and all the machine learnings and all the learning phase and every penny that you spent to launch a new ad set to try to get even spend, among other things, and completely tank stuff. Like, one of those objectively sounds dramatically simpler than the other, right? One of those sounds like a much more high risk, higher level of effort, much longer, much more expensive option with way lower confidence and the ability to take action from the outcome. Ultimately, a test is only as good as the actionability of the data. And if you are not splitting the traffic after the click, the data that you get lacks any actionability. It's not mildly valuable as a nice data point. No. It's completely useless because you're starting a completely new data set and journey inside of your account. And unless you're going to tank everything that you're doing inside of your account and throw all that money to the brand new experience, then you've wasted your time and your money, ruining your relationship with Facebook or tremendously damaging it, all to get a data point that isn't scalable, that you can't trust, built on, did it get lucky in a few days? That is a tremendously worse option. And I extraordinarily encourage you to never pursue that with your business ever again. Now, I hope this all makes sense. And if you have any questions about this stuff, please comment below. Remember, the tools that we use for this is Google Optimize or Optimizely. If you've got money and you can really do a lot of things, VWO is probably the best option because you can do JavaScript training on that website to just change out specific elements as well, so you don't even have to code the separate landers. And to qualm any concerns, this does not force your ads to go back into learning. This will not get you banned. And as long as your websites are compliant and you've proven that it's a better option, your results are going to be sustainable in a safe and reliable way. That's what we want. Actionability that produces positive results. Now, if you like this stuff, please subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, hey, please go ahead and subscribe to that. Get the automatic download. You don't even have to listen to it. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com. And hey, check out the Facebook Ads MBA program at mba.facebookdisruptor.com. Now, when we're doing landing page testing, we've already determined that, yes, we're going to do it after the click. Because the idea of investing heavily in a non-actionable data set that will ultimately hurt our relationship with Facebook that costs way more money and time and causes more harm than good is a bad idea, right? We're not running separate ads and separate ad sets to separate landing pages, even though those ads are identical, and having any expectation that we're going to have any actionable insight off of that test. That's trash. We've completely negated that. We're on the same page now. We're going to test after the click. Okay, what's the process? That's a great question. Let me tell you what I've done at 1,000 clicks a month and 5 million unique clicks a month. Fun fact, the process is the exact same. Why? Because it's just application of the scientific method. If you're using the scientific method, you're gonna be successful. There's a reason why science has been able to move people forward, and there's a reason why guessing isn't really great for you. Most people don't make it rich playing the lottery, but you can use science and better your quality of life pretty much overnight. That being said, what is the process? Okay. Step number one, we're going to get ourselves an after the click traffic routing piece of software or service. Again, Google Optimize, Optimizely, VWO. These are great industry standards. Some more expensive than others, some less adaptable than others. That's fine. Find the right fit for you. Now, when you're doing this test, Start with 5 or 10% of traffic. Do not go 50-50. What if you go 50-50 and it's a bad idea? How long are you willing to burn 50% of your money because you think you've got a good idea, but you were wrong? No. Instead, do 5 or 10%. And the point here is, now me personally, if I have a lot of users, or I can spend a lot of time to get to an answer, I'm going to start at 5%. If I have way less traffic, like maybe I'm getting 100 clicks a week, or I'm getting, 100 a day or something like that, or I need an answer much faster. In that case, I'll go 10. Now, from here, what we're really doing is we're looking at the bounce rate and the conversion rate of these sites. The bounce rate's tremendously important because remember, if the bounce rate is high, Facebook is going to start charging you a higher CPM to run your ads. And if the conversion rate is low, well, that's probably not good, right? Like, we're trying to improve conversion rate. So if your bounce rate is more or less even, and your conversion rate is better, and it holds, then we can move to the next step. Now, for me, I'll go 5 to 10, or I'll go 10 to 25. Basically, I go 5%, 10%, 25, and 50. Those are the steps along the way. Sometimes I'll skip the 5% if I can't afford the time, or I don't have enough traffic and I need to understand information. There are reasons why you might skip that step. Now, if the results hold, meaning that basically that bounce rate and conversion rate maintains at that higher level of traffic, great. That means we can move on to the next step. Now, what I urge you to do is set a line in the stand for each step. Now, maybe that means you need 1,000 clicks. And based on that, you're going to make a determination. Maybe it's 100 purchases, and you're going to make that determination. For me, when I was running 5 million uniques a month, I ran 24 hours. I had the luxury. The point is, you need to establish a benchmark that you are measuring every decision against in a consistent way. Now, generally, I'll even build out a doc that basically says, at this thing, at 1,000 users, or like 1,000 clicks, what did better? At 100 sales, what did better? In 24 hours, what did better, etc. Those types of things. Now, what that ultimately will mean for us is that we now have a standard unit of measurement for the testing of our landing pages. What's also really important about this is it means that we're keeping ourselves honest on whether or not that landing page is better or worse. Now, maybe in the 5-10% in step 1, it was like 25% better. And then you go from 5 to 10 or 10 to 25 and it drops to 3% better. Well, that might have happened because, hey, look, it just got really good traffic. Okay, that happens. Right at 5-10% of your overall thing, it just got the right people. I got lucky. Maybe it did 8% better, and then you go to 10, 25%, and it shoots to 20. You might have gotten just a little bit worse traffic, but that page is significantly better. Maybe it was 5% better, and then when you scale up the traffic, it goes to 3% worse. Again, that small percentage is not an indicator of future success. It's a nice barometer of whether or not you should move forward with the test. But you can't say, well, at 5%, this thing is crushing, so I'm going to do 100. That's incredibly irresponsible. So what we're doing here is we're now saying, if the ad holds, if that landing page, holds at 50% of traffic, now we're just going to make a wholesale swap and start the test over. Now, there's 2 things I really want you to be cognizant of here. Number 1, that page is not just getting traffic from Facebook. You might say, well, my Facebook ads get a lot better on this new landing page. I'm going to chase that. But what if it tanks your search and email results? Is that okay? You might say, well, this new landing page gets a 15% higher conversion rate. Great. And you swap it all the way over. And everything kind of holds. What are you going to do now? Maybe it's time to address your testing roadmap and understand what are the next creative tests that you have ready to go. Can we prioritize the ones that are more closely aligned with this new look and feel of the landing page so we can lean into that user experience? That's probably a really important thing to do. The other thing here is I will never not be testing this. As soon as I go from 50 to 100%, I immediately start the next test. I pretty much go from 50 to 95% because it's now that test is now the control and I'm launching the next test. You should always be in a state of improvement, or at least investing in the opportunity to improve. This is vital because honestly, sometimes the reason landing pages work is because of pattern interrupt. Sometimes the reason landing pages work is because of positioning, consumer psychology, trends in the marketplace. Sometimes it's just old and it's time to update things. Over time, your landing pages will probably get a little bit worse. But because Facebook's a machine learning algorithm where when you're running it broad, it's going to get a little bit better, you can kind of mitigate that decline. But if you can always work on making it better with a systemized process with multiple steps, where you are running all of your ads to each individual experience, because you're routing after the click, then you are regularly and in a dynamic fashion evolving with the marketplace. That is a tremendously powerful place to be. If you have any questions about this stuff, please ask below, DM me, comment in the open. If you like this, please hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening to this on the podcast, again, set it up for automatic downloads. You don't even have to listen to it. It just means so much to be able to share this with other people so they can see more success and less stress. If you like this information, you want more of it, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com. And if you really want to start leveling up your entire marketing capability set and what you could do so you can turn yourself from a Facebook marketer who kind of lacks confidence into a CMO or brand developer making 8 and 9 figure business decisions, check out the Facebook Ads MBA program at mba.facebookdisruptor.com. It's perfect for you. Now, the last thing that we're going to cover, because we've already established in our landing page testing that number one, we are never going to test in any fashion where we're not routing after the click, because we're not investing heavily into getting lucky at small scale to tank our relationship with Facebook, to ultimately invest a lot of time and money into something that we have no confidence in the outcome, because that type of test that lacks any actionability is a complete waste of our time and does far more harm than good. And we've established the process of what percentage of traffic goes to that new environment, and ultimately when are we going to try to level up from a 5% to a 50 to 100 or 95% of that traffic so that we can continually be testing and we can continually be improving, but we're not putting the future of our business at risk just to try to play the game. We have to cover probably the most important question here. What is a win? And then what? So what I want to really stress here is the magnitude of improvement that we are going to define as a win. If you get 3% better as a conversion rate off of your landing page, that's not a win. Maybe it's a little bit better right now. Maybe tomorrow the winds shift and your ads change a little bit and you launch an email campaign and it's a little bit worse. 3% ain't nothing. I will not make any change, even go from 5 to 10 or 10 to 25% and improve the delivery and give that new landing page more percentage of my overall traffic I won't do that unless the improvement is a double-digit one. I need 10%. Why? Because if this wins, what am I going to do next? I'm going to ultimately change every one of my landing pages, every one of my product pages. I'm going to implement this change globally because I've proven that's a better user experience, and I want a uniform user experience for continuity across my entire brand. I don't want each product page to have a completely different look and feel and for people to basically look at me and say I'm running a Mickey Mouse operation. No. So what's important here is we have to understand that a win comes with a demand for a high level of work. Now, high level doesn't mean high volume, doesn't mean workload. It means that it is an executive decision that needs to be made for an insight that needs to be applied universally as fast as possible. Now, the other side of this that we need to be mindful of is, why is it 10% at least? Well, for three reasons. Number one, what is the impact of that landing page change on every traffic source? Now, we might be measuring, oh, the conversion rate is better and our Facebook ad CPA went down. Great. What about the conversion rate from email? Is it worse? What about from search? Is it even the same? Do we potentially lose SEO rankings because we're making this wholesale swap? I will tell you this. Almost always an improvement in one place generally comes at the expense of someplace else. Now, here's the thing. I'm willing to say that if I get a 12% conversion rate improvement on that landing page, I'm willing to eat the potential for loss of efficiency someplace else. Maybe 12% better there means that something else gets 2% worse and something else gets 1% better, and I net at like a 7.5% better. That's great. I'll take that. But if it's 3% better, I may make that wholesale change and I actually lose 2 or 3% revenue out of the deal because it was only better during that testing period with those ads from Facebook that got spent today. And I launched the right email campaign to get the right, like, there's so much data that goes into the traffic to that site that we can't even begin to trust that will hold. Now, maybe it's 3% better at step 1 and 4% better at step 2 and 5% better at step 3. Okay. What happens when I put it 100%? Is 5% change enough for me to really want to change my entire ecosystem? And if I did that test in a matter of 2-3 weeks, what happens when seasonality hits or I make any other changes in my business? Maybe that landing page did 3% better, but another landing page gets 8% worse. The point is, if you're not doing at least double-digit better in your conversion rate, then there's not enough margin for you to be able to absorb the level of volatility that comes from the impacts on every other channel. Now, I'm not saying you got to go from 2% to 12%. No, 10% means 2% to 2.2, right? It's a relative percentage. If I can go from 2% to 2.5%, that's a home run. That's massive, right? That's over 20%, right? That is monumental. I'll take that all day, right? A 25% lift in my conversion rate optimization. And my, like, that's, why would I not do that? That's amazing. But I won't also skip from 5 to 100. I'll go, oh, that's great. 5 to 10. Maybe now it goes to 2.4. Great. 10 to 25. Now it goes from 2.4 to 2.38. Okay. And then now I'm at 50% and it nets at like 2.37, 2.39, and it holds. And my other thing is just converting it to 2. And it stays that way. Well, now I have a winner. I got an over 20% improvement. Oh, nearly 20% at a 2.38. It's like nearly 2%. It's like that's a 2.38 is a what? 2.19% improvement, something like that. I'll take that all day. Because maybe it makes other channels worse. And maybe when I implement it across everything, the net impact is a 4% lift across my entire business. That is a great move. I will do that. Maybe it's a 12% improvement. Maybe it causes some harm and some good, and I lose 50% efficiency across everything of the lift, right? I got a 19% improvement. Maybe it nets out at a 9.5. That's huge. There's no Facebook audience that's going to do that for you. Cost cap ain't going to do nothing close to that. No retargeting strategy is going to make that happen. But if you're running your ads at broad and you're using dynamic creatives to reduce the CPMs and standardize the look and feel of that traffic while improving the volume and quality of that traffic, this test is going to be far easier to run. And the value of that information is far more actionable. And the implication of that improvement is bigger than anything you could do by running some 2018 hack that is still for some reason pop. Like if you're still running ABO and interest groups on Facebook, you could just run broad and implement this as a landing page improvement and make fundamental shifts in your business that nothing you could ever do running 5-year-old strategies because somebody else on Twitter told you it was the right thing to do. Or somebody on YouTube that doesn't run the ads, that doesn't run businesses, that doesn't understand all this stuff and doesn't care about your bottom line said you should do because of some astronomical out of context ROAS number. Those people don't care about your business. They don't know what they're talking about. And ultimately, there's a reason that they're still running strategies that are years old. And it's not because they're good at their job. Because they're afraid of change and they don't do enough of the work themselves in a way that is meaningful enough to value getting better. That should be a giant red flag. So with that being said, this is how we do landing page testing. This is a vital skill for any Facebook marketer to understand, as well as any CMO and any business operator. This stuff can be done for extremely cheap, and you can track this performance on a Google Sheet. You don't need any fancy software. You just need to look at bounce rate and conversion rate. And that's really the long and short of it. That's the same strategy I use on companies getting 100 clicks a week and 5 million uniques a month. And yeah, I've managed that much. So take this, move forward with it. If you have any questions, ask. If you'd like more information, write down what else you'd like me to cover. And if you want information like this all the time, go to newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com, sign up for the newsletter. Read the stuff below, by the way. I take a lot of time and effort to make sure that there's great articles down in the descriptions of these videos. And if you're ready to make the investment in your future so that you can get 10, 20, 50, 100% better with what you're doing, so you can go from a place of lack of certainty and FOMO and heavy stress and honestly, lack of success, to a position of strength and scale, the Facebook Ads MBA program is probably what you're missing. And I would love to talk with you about what that would look like. So go to mba.facebookdisruptor.com, fill out an application, and man, I'd love to get you in the program so you and I can work together on making the future that you deserve the reality that you have. And with that, YouTube thinks you might like a couple of these videos. Don't forget to smash subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss anything. Like these videos if you do genuinely enjoy them, and comment below what's up, even if it's just like, hey, this was great fun. Thank you so much. Every bit of that engagement goes so far. Welcome to the definitive guide to how to use Facebook ads to grow your brand. Everybody's always talking about scaling and about testing and about all of these other things. And they're really, really important stuff. But we also have to remember that The purpose of running Facebook ads is ultimately to grow a business, right? Like we are trying to take something that works and make it bigger. Yes, that sounds like scaling. Yes, that can sound like ROAS or can sound like PSM. It can sound like a lot of different things. But the honest truth is there is a mindset of getting the work done so that you can do your job, generate some profit, and not get fired. That is the ROAS. That is the ad agency version of thinking. And there is the, I'm going to grow this business. I'm going to acquire profitable customer journeys and make testing easier by having a singularity in my customer and ultimately improving second purchase rate and stabilizing the business so that I can move many levers. There's that version of this, which is a growth and acquisition, VP of marketing, CMO view. So we're going to really dive into this today because I think this is one of, if not the most highly disputed topics. And I think it ultimately comes down to what is your actual job? Because if you legitimately think that spending the most amount of money you can at ROAS of X is really why you're being hired, you might be right. But understand that your job has nothing to do with the growth of the business. And there's a huge gap. So we're going to cover all of that today. Look down below. There's a huge article to cover all of these different things. And if you like what you have to see and you want to know more stuff, you can go to disruptyourschool.com, sign up for the newsletter, check out the Facebook Ads MBA program. Hey, there's a great new thing from Sarah Levinger. Go check it out, disruptyourschool.com. With that, let's get started. If you want to grow your brand using Facebook ads, the classic idea that I see 80% or more of marketers look at, and probably 95% of those that talk in public, is, well, we're going to get a good ROAS, and then we're going to spend as much as we can so we can generate profit. That's great. Most really good ad agency media buyers I know are excellent hunters. They can take the information you give them, they can put on their war paint, they go out into the wilderness, and they can get profit today. The problem is society wasn't built on the back of hunters. Businesses don't grow because of the success of individual salespeople. Business models and the acquisition of profitable customer journeys, or in this case, to continue this analogy, farming is what builds civilization and society and grows business. If you are the world's best Facebook advertiser with respect to, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get ROAS today, that's amazing. And if you have a couple bad weeks, you might be out of business. Whereas if your focus is, I'm going to prioritize the way that I use Facebook to acquire profitable customer journeys at scale to amplify an existing business that's working by leveraging its business model, you could just effectively, to use this analogy, go out and water your corn every day and get 100 people fat, even if you can't hunt anything. So you're in a much better place. Now, you've heard me reference this a couple of times, and so I'm really going to dive into it, but profitable customer journeys. That's what really matters. That's why we don't use ROAS, we use PSM when our goal is to scale a business, not get a good enough ROAS so we don't get fired. Now, what this really means is when you're spending money on ads, it's not there to say, how much should I spend today? How much should I make? That is interesting information, but that ultimately doesn't matter. What really matters is, what are my needs as a business? And generally speaking, one of the easiest ways to grow a business is to get more and more people to pay you more and more often. I know that's an oversimplification, but it's a really important thing. Basically, if I spend $100 to get somebody to pay me $60, that's theoretically a well below 1 ROAS, right? That's a 0.6. But if I know that person's ultimately going to spend $200 with my business, I doubled my money. I have a profitable customer journey. Maybe I lost 40 cents on the dollar right away. But if the LTV of that customer is a 2x, I legitimately can't spend enough money on that. Now, there's obviously cash flow and cadence and second purchase rate and the timing of all of that stuff. But the idea is, If you're out there every day getting 20 cents on the dollar for every customer you get, and ultimately you can only spend a certain amount of money before you are unable to scale your spend beyond that point at which your ROAS becomes desirable, you are inherently limited at how big you can get, right? If you're a hunter that can only bring back enough that you can carry, there's only a certain amount of people that you can feed. And if you fail a few days in a row, there's a certain amount of people that will die because of it. But if your focus is instead to generate profitable customer journeys with multiple transactions, now what you're doing is threefold. One, you're ensuring future cash flow, which is tremendous. Number two, you are focusing on acquiring customers that are ultimately more valuable to you. Because instead of spending 120 bucks with that 20% ROAS on 100, they're spending $200. So each customer is fundamentally more valuable. And number three, and probably the most important thing, is you are establishing a foundation from which to be able to sustain greater amounts of instability. And that is a superpower. Can I go 3 days or a week without my hunter killing anything? Yeah, because I'm growing corn. I got bread. I'm good. I don't need that. And the real world, what this looks like inside of Facebook ads is, can you handle 2-3 weeks of a ROAS that isn't good enough? The answer is no. I think you have a business model problem, or you have a growth and acquisition problem. And the way that we solve this is by prioritizing the acquisition of profitable customer journeys. Now, you might say, well, we're bootstrapped. We can't do that. Let me challenge that. What if instead of saying we're bootstrapped, we can't afford to have maturing LTVs, you said, what if our focus is to do the absolute best we can to make sure our bills are paid in a way that also ensures future cash flow? Maybe it takes 20 days. Maybe it takes 2 months. Maybe it takes 6 months. But let's, for the purpose of this conversation, say it takes 45 days for somebody that buys from you to buy again. Number out of the blue. Month number 1, if you break even, great. Month number 2, you have 15 days by the end of that, day 31 to 60. Day 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, and so forth and so on. You've got a whole bunch of people that are coming back and buying because they bought on day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Remember, it takes 45 days for them to buy again. So everybody that bought on day 1 through 15, they're buying again. And what this means is you wake up with money in the bank. Theoretically, think of it this way. Your marketing efficiency gets better because the revenue that you don't have to pay today to acquire today grows. And what that ultimately means is you've got a larger foundation on which to handle instability. Or you have the choice to spend some of that money on the acquisition of new people. Now, if you just break even every day for 45 days, the next 45 days, you're going to have a whole bunch of people. You're going to be profitable basically every day because you're going to have a whole bunch of people that bought in the first 45 days starting to buy again. So if all you do is break even, but you know that every customer that buys once is going to buy on average, you know that at least some of those people are going to buy a second time. If it's 5%, if it's 20%, who cares? The point is, come day 45, even if you're breaking even on your paid media, you're actually profiting as a business because those customers are starting to come back and buy again. So when somebody says, well, I'm getting a 2x ROAS, my question to them is, well, what's your second purchase rate and why are you not spending enough? Because for me, I would much rather focus on the acquisition of twice as many customer journeys where my ROAS is a 1. Knowing that I'm getting that recurring revenue. And again, when you say, well, I'm bootstrapped, we can't afford to do that. Well, sure, right up until anybody buys a second time. And if you can standardize that flow by picking maybe a hero product or offer or service where you're able to work on second purchase rate and have a singularity of your customer type and really test to improve it. And we'll get to all that stuff in a minute. Then it becomes a lot easier to ensure and even improve that additional revenue. And basically what that means is you're no longer out there living and dying by the work you do today. You are now investing in your future. And as soon as people start to come back and buy more than once, your business is now no longer tied to the success and failure of any one individual day, any one individual campaign, any one individual ROAS. You're now buying and selling customer journeys. And that is a far better metric. If your customer journey is 6 months and you've got a fairly high confidence what that looks like, that means you've got 6 months that you can kind of plan for instability. And as soon as you start to focus on these profitable customer journeys, you're going to start caring so much about the day-to-day. And you don't need to focus on chasing yesterday's wins because you're really focusing on maximizing the wins that you're getting tomorrow and next month and next year. And that'll fundamentally grow your business in a way that ROAS could never do. If you like this and you want to know more about it, please ask questions about it. Look down below. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to this. Hit the bell. Let some friends know about it. Share it all around. Let me know what else I can do to help out. And if you like this kind of information, you want more of this stuff, go to newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com and get me in your inbox at least once a week with all this type of stuff. Now, second thing that we need to talk about when you're trying to grow your business using Facebook ads. We've already covered why ROAS doesn't really matter because we're far more concerned in the volume of profitable customer journeys that we're investing in. And when we're investing in future customer journeys, generally speaking, we don't need to be cash positive on day one, because as soon as we start getting people buying from us, say that reoccurring revenue is 20% of the money we make today, we could run Facebook at a 0.9 ROAS and still make money. Say it's 30%. Say it's 50. Say email and search come in. You can get to the point where Facebook can run at a 0.8, a 0.7, a 0.6, depending on how much volume you want to spend. So what we're really focusing in here is how do you unlock the ability to lose money on the front end of your business? Well, the secret is second purchase rate. What is the likelihood of any of your customers buying more than once? Well, you might say, well, 5% of our customers buy this and buy that. Well, let me ask you this. What is the single product that you sell, product, service, or offer, that has the highest second purchase rate? What if you only promoted that one? As a for instance, maybe, you've got a product that sells for $40, but when that customer buys, on average, some people will never buy again, some people buy it like 20 times, but on average, that customer's worth $100. Well, day one, maybe you can't afford to spend more than $40 to get that customer. And obviously, it's less than that because of COGS and operating costs, but we're going to take that off the simplicity right now. But as soon as they start to buy a second time, maybe you can spend 45 or 50. At some point, you could theoretically spend up to $99 to get that person to pay 40 because you know they're going to pay you 100. Now, you might have some offers with a 3x ROAS. You might have some offers with the AOVs, $200 and all that stuff. But does that really matter? What are we investing in when we're trying to grow our business? Ultimately, it's business growth. So if we know that we can spend money to acquire future revenue on top of that first transaction, and we're going to focus our business on that profitable customer journey, then the best thing we can do is focus on that. And now, because we have a singular momentum in our business and a focus around that hero product, offer, or service, we just need to try to get somebody to buy more than once. Now, if it was already the product people were most likely to buy a second time, maybe 10% of people that buy this product buy a second time. Great. Maybe there's another one with a much better ROAS, but only 2% of people buy it. Is that better for you? Is it better for you to make a profit margin on a sale today where 1 out of 50 people ever buy again, or a smaller profit margin on potentially a higher volume of customers where 1 out of 10 people buys again? What if that 1 out of 10 gives you 2.5 return on your money? Is the ROAS on that offer where people only buy, when 1 out of 50 people buy, is the ROAS on that high enough to offset the future cash flow that you're getting? Probably not. So the point here is, when we begin to focus our advertising on the product, offer, service that is most likely to generate future cash flow, and then we just focus on breaking even there and then improving that second purchase rate, maybe it goes from 10% to 15. 10% second purchase rate to a 15% second purchase rate is an incredibly stable lift in business, because purchase rates are incredibly stable, right? When somebody buys once and they buy a second time, that's a number that doesn't move nearly as much as your CPA on Facebook today. It doesn't move nearly as much as the ROAS of some audience. It doesn't move nearly as much as other things, right? Like these conversion rates, right? And second purchase rates. These are things where basically how your business runs is kind of how it runs. And if you make it better, you're going to see big lifts. You focus on the conversion rate of your website, don't you? Why don't you consider a purchase a lead and then focus on the conversion rate of that lead to be a second purchase? Consider a second purchase your actual business objective, and everybody that buys once is a lead to get that second purchase. What if you flipped your business model to that? And you also looked at ROAS as, what's that second purchase worth? Now we're sitting in a situation where, well, I can spend more money on Facebook. I've got a healthier business with which to amplify. And I'm way less concerned about how any one audience does or how my ROAS is doing on any given day. I'm concerned with how many profitable customer journeys did I start? I'm concerned about CPA. Now, some of that might be new customers, some of it might be returning, but maybe we have to pay to get a customer to come back a second time. Is that really the worst thing? If our focus is to buy profitable customer journeys, and sometimes that profitable customer journey comes with an additional investment that's still profitable, is that a bad thing? Say the first sale costs us, $50 to make, and that second sale, well, it was a retargeting retention ad and we had to spend like $20 on it. Who cares? If each sale is worth $40, that first one we lost 10, on that second one we made 20, hey, we're up $10. And if they buy a third time, great, now we're making a lot of money on that customer. It's a contribution margin conversation. It's PSM, profitable scaling margin, lifetime value of a customer divided by the CPA and COGS for that customer's journey. Now that sounds incredibly complicated, especially when you're trying to put it across a whole bunch of different offers. So don't make it complicated. Focus on the offer, product, or service that ultimately gives you the best chance to leverage this math equation. Because as soon as you do, you're no longer worried about the day-to-day. You're now worried about how many people am I getting into the system? And what is the maturation rate of them from start to LTV? And what is the second purchase rate from initial purchase to second one? And what's the profit? At what point in this customer's journey do I ultimately hit the profit that I need? Say it's 45 days into that customer's journey. Well, maybe it'll take me then 45 days before I can take a loss at the front end of that funnel. Okay. Maybe it's 90 days. Okay. Great. So in 3 months, we can start losing money at the front end of our business while scaling it massively. Great. That's not a problem. That's just a definition of the parameters of what success can look like for you. So second purchase rate, how do we improve that? You can work on the product, right? You can work on the quality. You can work on, the experience. There's a million things that you can do, but if you begin to say, this is the product that most likely gets somebody to buy from my brand more than once, they don't even have to buy that product, but this is the thing that I advertise that most likely drives somebody to buy a second time. Of the people to buy a second time, this is generally how much they're worth. Or in general, of the people to buy that first time, how much are they worth over the lifetime value of the business, right? And for those of you like use 60-day LTV or 90-day LTV, those aren't things that we're talking about. That is cash flow projections. It's not an actual lifetime value metric. That is a false number. What we're worried about is total revenue divided by total customers for this product. Simple. Buy to that number. Improve the volume of people. And then work really, really hard. Instead of what audience are we going to target and what products are we doing and, what copy and all of this other stuff, stabilize that number and amplify the volume. Generally, this works by creative testing it broad because it's a more stable environment. And we'll get to why that really matters with Singularity and testing in a minute. But when you focus all that effort into one product, now instead of promoting 3, 4, 5 different offers with 3, 4, 5 different customer journeys, you have one. You know how much easier it is to solve one problem than it is to try to solve 3 or 4 that are all intermingled? How much easier would it be if you said, all I need to do is sell this product because I think this product is most likely to get somebody to buy a second time. And I'm going to make sure that the sale of this product is something I can count on. And I'm going to work on getting more people to buy the second time. What you've done is just created a larger cash flow profit margin on your customer journey and a greater situation for the growth of your business. You've taken this incredibly complicated system and you got it down to one simple thing that is really easy to manage, relatively speaking. That's how you grow a business. If you have any more questions, please drop them below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all of those fun things. Moving forward, the last thing we're going to talk about when you want to grow your business using Facebook ads or really any paid media. We've already determined that ROAS isn't the path because we're not hunters. We want to be farmers, right? Civilization was not built on how much meat one person could bring home today. It was built on how much corn and wheat can one person grow for 100 people, right? We're scaling a business. Very different conversation. And we're acquiring future cash flows that are profitable to acquire. If I have to pay $100 to go buy $120, I'll do that every single day. And if I say, well, I can't afford to do that because I'm bootstrapped and I have to make every dollar make sense for me, great. How long does that last? Is it a month? Is it 2 months? Is it 3? And at that point, what is the product that most likely gets somebody to buy a second time? Because when you get them to buy a second time, that number also improves. Oh, I'm bootstrapped. I can't get people to do stuff. Well, okay, what's the product that's most likely to get somebody to come back and buy a second time? Let's sell that one. What is the cadence on which they buy that second product? Great. On that day, the people are more likely to buy a second product. From that day, you're no longer going to have the excuse of I'm a bootstrap brand. I need to be profitable on day one because now you are in a business that is growing built on the lifetime value of a profitable customer journey, and you are acquiring that journey for less money than it is worth. That's it. Think of it as savings bonds, right? You are investing in a maturing asset. Now, what this does ultimately, when you find the offer that best fits this, is it gives you singularity. And the greatest thing about the singularity, not only mentally and also architecturally, like you can now promote your entire Facebook ad account can be basically one campaign, promoting everything to basically one product. And you can do landing page testing, you can do conversion rate testing, you can do second purchase rate improvements, you can do, and when they come back and buy multiple times, you can also do AOV improvements on all of those things. So you can try to make each transaction actually worth more money in and of itself. So that LTV continues to go up. For example, I have a clothing business. We found that the bra, when a woman buys the bra, there's, of the women that buy a second time, 80% of them buy again between 20 and 40 days. Great. We're going to focus on that thing because that means we're going to have a 50% chance of, we know we're going to be able to pay our bills on time. And we got a 50% chance or better of ultimately getting somebody to come back and buy that product or potentially have a profitable customer journey. And what that ultimately means with that business, people that do buy and people that don't, netting out all those fun numbers. Ultimately, what that means is now we focus on that. What do? We spend all of our ads on that one thing. Now let's try to improve the AOV. Great. How do we do that? Well, Let's try a 3+1 offer. The upsell on that landing page saying, hey, if you buy 3 of them, you get 1 of them for free. Great. Now the AOV of that first purchase goes from 1 bra to the purchase of 3 bras. We basically potentially have triple the AOV. Now, really, it went from about 45 to about 65, 70. It almost doubled because, you know, to be fair, about 30-40% of women were like, you know what? I'll take the buy 3, get 1 free because it's free returns. Why not? And if I like it, maybe they come back and buy the buy 3, get 1 free again. If you just bought buy 3, get 1 free and you like the product, you're going to come back and pay full price for a single one? Probably not. And we've raised the price from 30 to 40 bucks. Now, that customer journey where really their AOV started about 40 bucks, their LTV is $240. That's a fundamentally different conversation. How much can I afford to acquire a customer worth $240? If there's $240 lying down on the street, how much money can I spend to get it? It's a very different conversation than this customer on average spends $40. How much can I spend to acquire that transaction? That is a very different conversation. And ultimately that meant a 10x scaling of the business to a mid $20 million company in less than 9 months. That's how you grow a business using Facebook ads. And really what this means is when you have that singularity, you can focus your testing, your landing page testing, your conversion rate testing, your customer journey testing. And ultimately, as you improve the second purchase rate, and as you build the ads around this, and you figure out the positioning and the business model that best fits your needs for growth, it becomes infinitely easier to manage. And at the end of the day, what this means is you want a singularity of product and a singularity of the type of customer that you're bringing in. Now, when we talk about singularity, one of the things we have to, keep in mind is that the more audiences you run, the more different types of customers you're going to get. Now, maybe there's something similar between all of these different interest groups and all these different lookalikes of the people that you're bringing in, but you're effectively targeting different groups of people. To think that you're not attracting the same type of, like you are attracting the same type of person, even with wildly different targeting audiences, even with wildly different ads for each one of those targeting audiences, to say that, well, the person that comes in is basically the same, is, well, it makes no sense. So instead, well, what if we just go broad and we focus on the ad concepts that work the best? And based on that concept, we are appealing to the marketing angles and niches and psychology and whatever else that we're looking after that ultimately best brings in a customer who's more than likely to buy more than once. Well, when we only have 2 or 3 marketing angles in those concepts that attract people in, we don't have 10 campaigns with 5 different audiences with 5 different ads in it that's effectively up to 250 different types of people. We have 3. And the odds are there's a pretty high overlap between those 3 people and how they engage with our business. And we don't need to solve for every single person. We just need to solve for the net majority. And if we can solve for the net majority of 3 people to make that customer worth more money to us by the time they're stopped spending money with us, that's a much simpler problem to solve, and we're going to grow a lot faster. Because at the end of the day, what also you have to keep in mind is how many tests are you running? How expensive is it? How confident are you with the outcomes of any one of those tests? If you're running 5 different products and landing pages for each one with an individual email flow for each one and having to get customer service for each one of those different products, and then all the upsells and all the ads and all this other stuff, how many moving parts do you have in your business? And when we say what we need to do is grow our business 10% next month, what are you going to do? That's an insanely complicated situation versus saying we've got one product that we absolutely know we can acquire a profitable customer journey on this with extreme confidence. And that cash flow generally looks like a purchase on this day, and 80% of people buy a second time within this time, and ultimately that person over time is worth X. Great. Well, we have maturing cash flows and customer journeys happening all the time because we're getting new sales every day, new customers every day, maturing customers every single day. Well, now if we don't spend any money on ads, we're going to have revenue coming in for weeks or months. All that revenue that's coming in is money that theoretically if we just broke even on ads, would be pure profit. And what if we spent some of it so that we could grow faster? You can't do that if you've got 10 different products. You can't do that if you're using targeting audiences. If you're chasing around different audiences and having different CPAs and different ROASs and different offers, there's no way that you're going to be able to ultimately get your business down to this. Well, how do I improve the second purchase rate of the product that most likely drives a profitable customer journey? You can't solve that problem. And when I say, what are you going to do in 3 months to grow the business? What is the 6-month plan to double the business? What is, if I want to make sure that whatever I did in the last 12 months, I'll do in the next 6. You can't solve that problem if you're promoting a bunch of different things in a bunch of different places, because you have no idea what you can expect tomorrow. Because you're investing in depreciating assets, solving 20, 30, 50. And the one example, we gave 250 different problems. That's really hard. Or you could get really good. And the other fun side of this thing, when you're using Facebook ads, is that when you teach Facebook ads to do one thing really well, imagine how much better it will be in 3 months than if you asked to do 10 things. If you had one job when you showed up to the work today, how much better at that job do you think you're going to be in 100 days? Versus if you had 20 things to do each day. How many reps are you going to get doing that job if you have to do 20 different things? How many mistakes are you going to be able to learn from if you have to do 20 different things versus one? I'd argue, realistically, you're going to be 20 to 30 times better doing just the one thing over that 100 days. Or way more than that. Because as soon as you start to unlock second purchase rate and you go from 5% to 10, or you get your conversion rate on your landing page from 2% to 2.1. As soon as you start to unlock these things, or you improve the AOV of one transaction from $40 to 60. What if that happens on both transactions? Now you made $40 more. Like, once you access Singularity at the front of the marketing, you allow yourself to be open to the force multiplication of all of these optimization efforts. Because if you're chasing audiences that live and die, that's customers that are coming in where one day you got a whole bunch of customers that look like something, and then a month later, you never see those customers again. How many landing page optimizations did you make based on the audience that you were attracting, based on that interest group that you were running, that now you no longer spend on? What about that product that was doing great as in one audience, and then you tried to pivot to a different audience and a different lookalike, and that product wasn't as good because the ROAS was better someplace else? What does your email journey look like to get that customer to come back and buy again? How complicated is the system that you're trying to run? And ultimately, I'll end with this. This is the big, big difference between what I see the vast majority of ad agencies talking about. And look, really, really smart people. I was just at Geek Out, and several people were on stage giving really, really good advice on how to be the best hunter you can. To basically not get fired as the marketer. And I'm here to help you understand that that doesn't mean nearly as much is how to actually grow your business. Because at the end of the day, why are you spending money on ads anyway? Is it so that you can have an agency that you don't want to fire? Or is it so that you can make way more money? If you want to grow your business, you can't be looking at ROAS. YouTube thinks you might like a couple of these things. Go ahead and subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you on the internet.